Hi everyone, welcome. Welcome back to another class. I am excited to paint again. I hope you are all too. I see some people are already here in the chat. So if you are new here, say where you're from, who you're painting with, if you're painting with anyone, maybe how long you've been painting. I always love knowing where everybody's painting from, and yeah, just kind of their skill level. It's kind of fun to just chat. So we'll be chatting for the next about 20 minutes. If you are watching the replay, make sure to check the description down below, and I should have timestamps in case you want to skip this and go straight to the supplies or the class. Yeah. Someone says, hello, I'm pretty new to this and I have various random paints. Some are acrylic and some say tempera. Can I mix them? Tempera is a different paint than acrylic, so I would stick with just acrylics. At least from what I know of tempera. I believe they are different, considering acrylics are permanent and tempera is another word of temporary. It's different than acrylic, so I would stick with just acrylics. Use what you have. Thankfully we'll be using mostly like pretty muted colors, so you could probably get by with a lot of just a few colors for this one. You could even do this one in black and white, which would actually be, I don't know, that would look pretty cool in my opinion. But yeah, so I would stick with just acrylics if you can. My hair is flopping. I think I might do something different with it. Yeah, no problem. You're welcome. How long have you been painting? Because you said you're pretty new to this. Do you need a palette knife for this one? No, I will probably not use a palette knife for this one, although I probably could with like the bottom area, or you could even do it if you wanted to use a palette knife. That would actually be pretty cool with this one. If you were to use a palette knife, I would say you could use it on the trees, which maybe we could. My thing is that if I used a palette knife on the trees, it would bring forward the trees, and everything in this painting is kind of like mystical off on the distance a little bit. So I don't, even though I love using a palette knife, as you know, I don't think I'm going to use it for this one, because I do want the focus to be on the deer. So yeah, there's that. Let's see. Trying to think. I'm not using a traceable for this one. Even I do have it available for everyone on my Patreon, but I think I might. Well, actually, I don't know. I'll print it out just in case. I might do it just for the deer, or maybe I'll cut out the deer. Let's see. Why is this not going to the full size? I've done about 5 different instructional paintings. This is my 6th. Oh, cool. All right. So getting in. What was the reason for starting to paint? Was it just you wanted to start painting? Oh, I know a lot of people last year started because of COVID and they were in lockdown, but I think it's definitely mellowed out a little bit in terms of people and their time at home. I have an 11 by 14 canvas, but I have an 8 by 10. Would that be better since I'm just learning and might not turn out too great? If you are newer and you feel like you paint slower, then an 8 by 10 would be better because you have less space to cover. Or if you feel like it's not gonna come out great, which I think it will be fine. We all start somewhere. You could use an 8 by 10 because, you know, it costs less and things like that. I would suggest if you're a new painter and you want something more to practice on, I have a few things in my Amazon shop that would help with that. I have like a 9 by 11. It's canvas. It's not canvas paper, although there is one in there that's canvas paper, but it's a canvas pad, so it's canvas material. It acts the same way, but it's a lot cheaper and it takes up a lot less space. So for practicing, I use that for my Patreon classes, and I also use that if I'm practicing something, or if I want to try something that I have no idea how it's going to come out. I will do it on that first, and then I can get in a try before doing it on a canvas. That's helpful. And then I also have, let's see, I also have this. It's just like it's a mixed media book that I can keep. I use watercolors for this, so I keep all my watercolor illustrations in here. But it's thick enough paper that I could use acrylics, which I have another book that it comes in a 3-pack, that I've saved the other one for like acrylics, doodles and stuff like that. But I would suggest getting something like that where you can do little paintings and practice certain things so that you're not like taking up an entire painting. And something like this, I would say an 8 by 10. It would be fine to do either. But if you don't think it'll come out good and you would feel better about using up an 8 by 10, then go for that. Can we talk about the misty effect or wait until that time comes? Just wondering how you had tips to achieve that look. Yeah, a lot of it has to do with color, actually. So, for instance, when we do the background, we're not going to be coloring the trees, dark green or black. Like, there are gray trees in the back. So we'll just be working our layers and giving the certain effects. There are ways to do, you can do a sponge wash. You can do a dry brush technique, which I might show that. Hi Laura, hello. I might do a couple different tips in that area, but for the most part the misty effects comes from the certain colors, the dulled down colors that we'll be using. So yeah. Let me know if you have any other questions. I'm still trying to figure out if I want to use the traceable or not. I feel like it's nature and I don't want to use it, but at the same time, whenever I do animals, I always like the peace of mind knowing that I won't have to like do proportions and everything. Like, I could do it, it'll just take longer, which is totally fine. If I'm painting on my own, and I'll just do it and work really longer, work a lot longer on like an animal of some sort. But if you're not good at drawing or not good at proportions and things like that, it is really helpful to have the traceable. But I don't know. Let me know if you're using the traceable. I can post it real quick. This is the traceable. For anyone wondering, I have a Patreon and I do traceables for anyone who supports the channel via my Patreon. And yeah, it's just a little gift that I give for anyone who wants it. Okay. I'll print one out so you can see what it looks like. I guess it helps to have like paper in the printer if I'm gonna print something out, you know. I was printing some other things in different papers, so that's why I didn't have paper in there. But yesterday or the day before, I printed out, just on a whim, I printed out my watercolor illustration on sticky paper. So I like cut them out and used them as stickers for my Patreon postcard club thing. So the traceable, how do you make it work for a larger canvas? How large? Because I have it available for a a 8x10, or sorry, a 9x12 that you could use for an 8x10, as well as a 11x14. So this is what the 11x14 looks like. So it's like kind of cropped off a little bit, which also lets you put this little guy like kind of anywhere you wanted to. You could put it over to the left, over to the right. Doesn't really matter. Why did it come out so bad quality? Anyways, so you could use it for a bigger one. Also, if you are a patron and you want a bigger size, you can always comment on whatever it is, whichever one you want, ahead of time. If you want it for the live, you can comment ahead of time, be like, hey, can I have it for this size or whatever, and I can make that adjustment. Obviously not right now because class is about to start, but in the future, for future ones. So I think I might just like cut this little guy out and do it that way, because the rest of it is nature, and it doesn't have to, like, nature's easy and it doesn't have to look like that. But again, whenever I'm doing animals, sometimes it's easier just to have, you know, a guideline. Yeah, of course. I should probably put that as a note when I do the traceables, because I do them like 2 weeks in advance. So thank you for saying that, because I'll put that as a note in the post. I've said it before, but new people probably don't know. Let me know if anyone has any other questions. We are going to get started in about 4 minutes. 4.5. Let me just turn my phone sound off so it doesn't go off in the middle of class. That's unprofessional. Let me know how you all are. I feel like, I mean, I know I had a class 2 weeks ago, but I still feel like I haven't talked to you guys in forever. Amelia's doing great, in case anybody's wondering. She's 5 weeks old now, and sleeping and eating great. My other kids adore her. Every time I wake up with her, I like walk out, and then the other kids are like, I want to see Mia, I want to see Amelia, and her name's Amelia, but my older son calls her Mia because I think he can't quite say Amelia. He just calls her Mia. Or he calls her Mimi, which is like a mix of Amelia and Baby. He has more nicknames for her than we do. But they're adorable with her. Both the kids love her. But ready and excited. Yay, me too. That's so cool. Being a mom is the best thing I've ever done. It is pretty cool. It's hard and frustrating sometimes, but it is so rewarding. Let me tell you. And I think they say it gets easier after 3, and I can see why. Because Lincoln, my oldest, is getting to the point where he's like, I can talk to him, he understands things, he helps out, he can like clear the table of the dishes, he can bring me my water if I'm like nursing, and like all these different things, and like he's starting to help out around the house. And yeah, so I can see we plan to have 4, but whether or not we have more or less is I don't know. But I'm excited to see how everything like progresses and how the kids grow, and I'm just excited. Being a mom is so cool. So yes, it is the best thing. But okay, I'm gonna finish cutting this guy. So if you are using a traceable, normally I would have traced it, and then for this specific guy, I would have gone around, and I'll go over this if you are using the traceable. I would have gone around it with the black, just like when we did our horse, or if you're a patron of the magenta tier, when we've done our other things like our dolphin or our tiger, you outline it in black paint, so that when you go over it with your background, you can still see the black coming through. But how I'm doing it, I cut this guy out. I dehorned him so that I can just freehand those, because that'll be pretty easy. But to get proportions, this will be a nice just outline, and I can put in the rest of it. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can do it how we've always done it, or I'll be showing you a different way to do it. I know Angela Anderson uses like chalk sometimes. She'll let it dry, she'll blow dry it, whatever, and then she'll use chalk, and I think Cinnamon Cooney does that too. But yeah, there's a couple different ways you can do it. Okay, we are ready to go. Oh, I forgot to get my paint out, guys, duh, I need paint. YOLO. That's okay, I'll get it out in a second when we go over paint supplies. Actually, I'm gonna go over it now. Let's get, what do we need? What did I say we need? That's more important. Because I could probably come up with new new colors. Okay, basics, black and white, burnt umber. Burnt umber is just a dark brown. You could use burnt sienna or anything like that as well. You would just have to darken it with a black. Titanium white, black, raw umber. I do have yellow, red, and phthalo blue, which is essentially just your red, yellow, blue. Doesn't necessarily matter what kinds, because there's some orange colors in there. There's some cool colors, which is where the blue comes from. So just essentially your primary colors, your black, white, and your brown. Okay, that is what we will be doing today. All right, let's get going. Let's see. Hello, welcome to another live stream. Welcome to another class. Let's go ahead and go over some supplies real fast. Let's see. I think I bumped this. There we go. All right, so I am using an 11 by 14 canvas. You can use really whatever you fancy. Use whatever you want. But mine is a stretched canvas, so I have sides, top, and bottom. So make sure if you are using a stretched canvas to paint the sides so you can just put them right on your wall and you won't have to worry about the white sides showing. We are going to be using, I'm using acrylics today. The Hippie Crafter acrylics. The colors I will be using are my white, black, burnt umber that just fell to the ground. If you don't have a raw umber, I think I said burnt umber, raw umber, or burnt umber, you could do that too. It's just a little bit lighter, which means you'll need to add a little bit of black to it in certain areas. But we'll probably be adding a lot of reds and yellows or oranges to some of like the foreground and the animal, which it comes to red and yellow. And then I have phthalo blue. A lot of the misty effect, there are blue tones in there. It's not just gray. So if you have a blue that you can add to your gray colors for the background, it's not going to take much, but yeah. So essentially we have white, black, and this is violet. I don't need violet, I need black. The violet I have is so dark, I often mix it up with my my black. Obviously not before I actually paint, but when I get it out I always grab the wrong one. Yeah, black. And it actually looks like my thing isn't working, so give me a second. My palette isn't working, so give me 1 second. I'm going to try this again. Oh, there we go. Yay! Okay, cool, worked. Alright, good. We don't have to like redo anything. Okay, so these are the colors. My white, my black, my brown, my red, my yellow, my blue. It doesn't have to be phthalo blue, it can be any color blue, but I usually like to use phthalo blue is my favorite color of my blues. I have pretty much rid of my ultramarine blue. I rarely use it. Yeah. Okay, those are the colors. I have a kit of brushes that I recommend. That is in my Amazon shop. I like to use the same things that you guys use, so if you don't have a brush kit, you only have a few brushes, I would recommend it. It's like anywhere from $15 to $20 depending on the day, because it's Amazon and they change their prices. But it's been really helpful. I've had this for my voice is going. I've had it for about, I don't know, a year and a half, using it at least once a week, and they've held up. So it's definitely worth the investment of $20. Yeah, I'll be using that. Water. What's the difference between Phthalo Blue? Between Phthalo Blue and what? Ultramarine Blue? I mean, I could show you. Let's see. Phthalo Blue is darker. So let's see. This is Phthalo Blue, and this is Ultramarine Blue. Phthalo Blue has a warmer tone to it, so think more of like in your, like if you added green, like green tones to it, like more of a tealish dark blue versus a this is a very cool, so this is a warm dark blue and this is a cool dark blue. That's pretty much the only difference. One's a cool blue and one's a warm blue. My favorite color is teal and like the really warm green blues, so I tend to like this one better. But it doesn't necessarily matter for this specifically. If you're doing like oceans and things like that, I would do Phthalo Blue. Maybe essentially the blues, you could do Phthalo Blue for the water and Ultramarine Blue for the sky. The sky's a little bit more cooler, ocean's warmer. That idea. Okay. Water, you have your palette, paper towel. If you wanted to use a palette knife on the trees, go for it. If I'm gonna use it on the trees, I would only use it on the left one and maybe a little bit on the right ones, but those are further away and I don't want to draw attention to them because they're further in the background, so I would hesitate using them. Maybe more dull colors, but we'll see. And honestly, I hadn't planned on using it. Somebody asked earlier and I was like, oh, maybe, I don't know. So it's not necessary for this class. I believe that is it, and we are ready to get started. Does anybody have any questions before we get started? For anyone wondering, I have a Facebook where I put out my events. I have a Patreon, I put out extra classes and traceables. I have an Instagram where I post other things and polls and kind of more behind the scenes stuff. Feel free to follow me, subscribe and like. Let's get started. Okay. I like to do my backgrounds with a large filbert. A filbert is just, it's like your flat brush, except it's oval at the top rather than flat. The reason for this is I feel like it blends better and it leaves less lines and streaks when I am blending things together. This has a ton of layers. So the first layer is going to be the gray sky, and then we have a layer of gray of trees, and then we have a layer of darker gray trees, and then we have the trees on the right, the trees on the left, the deer, and then the foreground, which can kind of get a little bit blurry. So there's a lot of layers with this, but thankfully I think it'll be easy with the step-by-step. I'm going to go ahead and get my grays, black and white, and then maybe a little bit of my blue and brown out, because there are a lot of brown tones in this. Let's see, can I get rid of this? No, I can't. That's fine. Oh yeah, I can. Okay, perfect. Sorry. Behind the scenes stuff. Okay. I'm gonna get out my, let's see, a little bit of black, a little of white. And I'll probably add a touch of blue and a touch of brown to this gray that I'm going to be making. I'm just going to get out a little bit of brown and a touch of blue. And again, it doesn't have to be phthalo blue, it can be any blue you have. It's just to kind of make it so it's not gray. Okay, what I will say is I do use a palette knife to mix my paint, because if I mix it in this, then all of that paint is going to get wrapped up in here, and then you might get blue streaks, you might get brown streaks, you might get black streaks in the sky, and we don't want that. So if you don't have a palette knife to mix, I would say mix with your smallest brush, because that's all you need to mix. That's what I used to use. I used to just use a 1 or a 2 to mix my colors so that I wasn't getting paint all up in my big brushes. Okay, so I'm gonna grab a ton of white here, separate my white piles. I have some white. I'm gonna add a touch of black, and it's not, when I say a touch of black, I mean very little black. I'm gonna mix this together, see where I stand. So this is a very cool gray, and I want it to warm up just a tad bit, so I'm going to add some brown to it. And I think I'm going to need more paint, so I'm just going to use the rest of this white. A little bit of black. A little bit of brown. And I think that is pretty good. Okay, so I have my off-white white, so my grayish white. Essentially, this is the misty background. This is the it's interesting when you look at a photo like this, because your brain is like, oh, those are clouds, it's white, right? But when we're actually looking at the colors of the painting, it's not white. It's very much a gray. Okay, so go ahead and get your brush wet. Get some of that paint, and I'm just going to start at the top and work my way down. If you have sides, don't forget to do the sides. Because I know that all of this is going to be the same color, I'm just going to do the top side right now, so that I don't I don't forget, because I often forget. At least the right side I often forget. So I'm just gonna do that. And you're just going to, don't be shy with the amount of paint that you put on your canvas. If you are seeing a lot of the texture of the canvas come through, you probably need more paint. Sometimes it means you need more water, but whenever I'm doing the background like this during a paint night and I don't plan on doing another coat of paint, I won't add water. I will just grab more paint because I don't want it to become translucent, because then you will need another coat. But if I plan to spend more than one session on this and I can wait for this to dry and then put another coat on, I don't mind adding a little bit of water to the paint because I'm going to cover it with another coat. But during paint nights, because we don't do that, more often than not, we don't do that. And something like this, you can change. So I'm looking at this, and I think it might be a tad bit too dark. So I'm just going to go in with my white and start from the bottom and work my way up, and just adding a little bit of white here and there, just to lighten it up ever so slightly. And because this is all wet, it's going to blend in. And you can go in different directions to help it blend in, but then after you're done, I would suggest to go all the way across in big, long strokes to help all of that blend in. Alright, and I would go about down to here. I would just make sure you don't necessarily have to cover all of this. I would focus more on the middle because that's where the light goes all the way down. The light part of the sky goes all the way down. Yeah, and I have a weird shadow here. What is this shadow? Oh, it's my cord. Okay. Just move that. There we go. Yeah. So go. Alright, so that's good. So now what we're gonna do, while that dries, rinse out your brush so it doesn't, your paint doesn't dry in it while we mix this. You're also gonna wanna leave it outside of your water. It's not good to leave your waters in the brush, your brushes in the water, or your water in the brushes. And we're gonna make a darker gray. So with the same colors, your white, your black, your brown. I didn't add any blue to that one. At least I don't think I did. I might add it to a little bit of the trees because as we move forward, we're gonna be seeing more and more color. And blue is a color that is in the trees for the green. So I might add just a tiny bit this next time around. So let me grab a little bit more white. White is our base. We always start with white as our base because white is very easily tainted. It would take a lot of white to taint another color, to the extent of getting this light color. Okay, so I'm going to add more black, more brown, and touch of blue. Okay, so I'm using the same colors as last time, except I did add a touch of blue this time around. And I'm just making it a little bit darker, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and wipe off my palette knife. And real fast, this is about where the bottom is. You could make it lower if you wanted to, which actually I think I might. I'm gonna lower it. Just gonna brush out this part. So now I won't know when I come down with this next layer. I need to go over this section. Okay, so we're gonna take this gray color now, and I'm gonna work from, I think I might work from bottom up. And as we work this area, we're gonna start adding in some trees. And you can do it with this brush, you can switch a brush. It's up to you. You can add some straight trees. If you have a little bit less paint in your brush and you go over it a few times, it will look more like it's in the distance because it will blend in a little bit. And you could just start adding in a little bit of that forest. I'm gonna go ahead and switch my brush. For the trees, I would suggest either using a flat brush, or if you have a fan brush that you like, or you have another way of doing trees that you like, you can do that. There's a big tree here, a smaller tree here, and another one here. So if you've ever done Bob Ross trees, you can do that way. Which is just getting your brush and going back and forth. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . using the tip. And sometimes I like to go kind of in a swooping motion, because a lot of times trees kind of grow up and out. And you can make sure that when you're first starting to not cover up all the background. But once you get down below, you can just cover it up. Just slowly adding a couple more trees here. If any of you have any questions or something's not working in the way that it's working on my canvas, or however, if you have a question about how I'm doing something, definitely just ask it in the comments. More often than not, somebody else might have the same question or don't know they have the same question and just don't think to ask it, and it'll help everybody in the class. Or sometimes I will forget to say something. I've been painting a very long time, and some things come naturally to me that they might not to you. So if you have questions, please, please, please ask them. So right now I'm just kind of putting in all the little things. Essentially just creating busy work in the background. I'm flicking up, I'm creating little trees here and there. This is where the I might place mine a little bit over, but depending on where all your trees are, you can change where your deer stands. And you won't see a lot of the stuff in the background. So I'm going to use, if you have like an old brush, you can use to give some different tree texture. So I can show this. I have, let's see, someone has a question. You're so fast. I hope someone has a question so I can catch up. Yeah, if you guys have questions, please tell me. I'm gonna slow down a bit. I'm going to show you a different technique in case so some people can catch up. So for trees, if you have an old brush, feel free to use this. You can get it wet a little bit, but then you dab it on your paper towel to break up all the bristles. Grab some of your paint. Try to grab it fairly evenly. And then you can add to the canvas like that, just by dabbing. And if you have a little bit more water on your brush, it becomes a little bit more translucent. So it looks a little bit further in the distance. Alright, so I will wait just a little bit. Again, so this is all in layers, so that was one more layer. Maybe I'll add a little bit more to the right. Carnifex. What do I call you? What's your name? Let me know. Let me know when you guys you have at least these 2 layers, and then when I get a couple thumbs up, we can move on, because I don't want to leave anybody behind. Carla, oh. Okay. I'm still trying, but might quit until another day. It's hard. Which part is hard? How can I help you? Because you're here live, so you get to ask questions, and you get to be here with me live. So anything that I can do to help, let me know. I will use this time to go over something that we are doing in my Patreon. So every other Friday, so we just had a class this last Friday, and then 2 weeks from last Friday we'll have another class. Every other Friday I do a Patreon class from my magenta tier and above, and this month specifically, we are doing, usually it's a different painting every class, just like our paint nights, but sometimes they're an hour long, sometimes they're 3 hour long. It just kind of depends on what we're painting, but this class specifically, this month we're doing a 2-part class. So we are painting a beach scene, and we just had a class, and this is what we have done so far, and we are finished with the top part, and we've just blocked out the colors of the bottom. So we still have a lot of the wave detail and rocks and trees over here, the palm trees. We're done with the sky, and I love how it's turned out. I'm super excited about it. I'm excited to spend more than just a few hours on a painting, because a lot of times we can get in this, at least for me, because I teach paint nights, I get in this like painting mode of like a 2-hour time frame. So I try to finish a lot of paintings in like an hour to 2 hours, and not that that's bad. It's not bad, because most paintings I think can be done in a few hours. But it's fun to get to spend a little bit more time on it, like being able to spend like an hour on all of those clouds was just like heaven as a painter, because a lot of times your clouds are in the background, they're not they're not the focus of the painting, so you don't get to spend very much time on them. And it was a lot of fun to do that. So if you are not a patron and you want to paint that with us, head over to my Patreon. It's for magenta tier and above. You'll also get all the traceables, you'll get quick tips, and you'll also get access to literally every single painting I've ever painted in my Patreon for my patrons. All the Friday tutorials. So you'll get access to like everything. But yeah, I'm really excited about that. Other things that are going on, I'm trying to think. Next month, we are doing a DIY card tutorial live class. So if you're not on my Facebook, definitely make sure to go check that out. I have all of the classes that are coming on there, as well as snowman as well. Last year everybody really liked the snowman and DIY cards, and there was a request to do the DIY cards earlier so that people have time to paint them and then send them out. So that's why we're doing it. That's our next one, is our DIY cards. And actually, do I have them? I have them somewhere. I don't know where they are. Oh, here they are. Yes. So we have this one. We have Joy, a little ball. Let it snow. And you could do these in any colors. Last year we did a red and green theme. This year we're doing a green and blue theme. And if you are not in my artist community, which I will post a link right now. If you are not in my artist community, get there, because we take a lot of times I will take polls of what you guys want to paint, including for this one I put a poll back. Let's see. I put a poll back in, I don't know, it must have been like September, because that was it was before I had Amelia, and I was having to like think really far ahead because I was planning out all my content because I knew I was gonna have a baby. So I was like, what do you guys want to paint? So if you're not in my artist community, get connected. You'll get reminders of classes, and and you can participate in polls and everything. Okay, how are we doing? Linda. Yeah, some people like to watch the first time, get an idea of what's going on, and then they'll paint later. And that's totally fine. And also, Carla, if you're one of those people who has to wait until the live is over, you can do that. You can wait until the live is over. You can also start out painting with me, try to keep up, and then if you can't, I'm pretty sure you can pause the live video. You'll just be behind if you wanted to ask a question, you'll be behind. So I would suggest that you can still paint along with us. I would just, you'll have to pause it and then you'll be a little bit behind, but that's totally fine. I'm going to go ahead and keep going. I don't really have any more announcements to stall with. So let's go ahead and make our next color. We're going to put in all of the larger trees and some of the twigs that kind of go out everywhere. So let's grab our handy dandy palette knife. If you have one, or your small brush that you're mixing with, grab some more white. This one has a lot of white in it. And we're going to make a slightly darker shade than this one. You'll see that there is the sky, then there's like the trees that we've just done, and then slightly darker to add one more layer. There's a lot of like dead trees without any foliage on them, and that kind of fills in a lot of these gaps over here. So we're going to do that real fast. So grab your white, your black, a little bit of that brown, tiny bit of that blue. You're just going to make it a tad bit darker. Dark enough to make a difference, but not so dark that it's like, whoa, it's really dark. Just enough that we can see a tiny bit of difference. And I think this is perfect. What's nice about mixing on the same part of the canvas is I can compare it. I can compare it to the last gray that I made. Okay. Let's see. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a few brushes. So if you have a fan brush and a liner brush, those would be two good brushes to use. If you do not have either of those, I would suggest to use an older brush that you can break apart, kind of like what we did here, but you'll just do the same technique that we're doing. The first thing that I'm going to do is grab some of this paint and you need a little bit more water. If your paint isn't going on smooth, try adding a little bit more water to your paint. So I'm just going up from the ground with this darker and just adding some more texture. With either your fan brush or your bigger brush. And then what I'm going to be doing is taking some water, some paint with my liner brush. If you don't have a liner brush, you could do a just a smaller, whatever small brush you have. And just take your brush and you're just going to put in a bunch of these small trees with all of their branches. This is the part that could be a little bit tedious, but I think it makes a big difference when looking at the whole thing. And when you're doing this, I want you to make sure to do it randomly and to cross your branches. Because nature is not symmetrical. I think I'm going to add a tiny bit of blue to this because it's a little bit too warm. So I'm just using my liner brush, and if you don't have a liner brush, I would highly recommend that being on your list of brushes to get, because it makes such a difference when you're adding a ton of small lines to a painting. It makes it go so much faster, and you don't have to worry about your small brush not being like small enough, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna add another tree over to the left. It's got a best friend that's right next to it. Maybe they're part of the same tree. And I'm gonna add a couple branches that come out to the side. This is probably the most relaxing thing. Just adding all these branches. I know for some it can be stressful because like maybe they don't look like this. But again, this I feel like is not necessarily a skill thing. It is a tool thing. What was the colors for the big trees? The ones in the back. So all of this gray has been the same gray, just darkened. So all of the gray, with the exception of the back, didn't have blue in it. The back had white, black, and brown. The big trees, the first layer we did had black, brown, white, and a little bit of blue, but just a little bit more of the black and brown, so it was a little bit darker. And then this one has all of those colors again, but again a little bit darker. So essentially just a little less white. But always start off with white as your base. Yeah, you're welcome. Alright, so I think I'm gonna have one tree up this way. Another tree. These are pretty straight trees here, and then the bigger one there. So I'm just blocking in where these trees are gonna be. They're so straight. And then this one's a bit bigger. And don't forget to go on top. So I just put that in with just whatever brush I had. I switched to this one so I could do it a little bit thicker. And I just used the gray that I'm using. all the way down. And with that same gray, I'm going to do the same thing that I've been doing, but just a couple branches here and there. I think at this point, quantity over quality is better. So for instance, if you really truly look at some of my branches, like if you look at them, they're not all the best. Like this one needs to be bigger at the base. This one, like, who knows where it went. So like it's better to do quantity at this point, because once you get enough in there, once you get enough branches, it all just kind of melds together and you don't see the quote unquote imperfections. It's when you have too few little branches that then you start seeing all the places. And again, you're gonna see all of the places that you feel like you messed up a lot more than somebody else would. So don't be too hard on yourself. Are you referring to my baby? Can you hear her? She woke up from her nap, so I'm sure that Dad is trying to console her. Alright, I'm just gonna have this go off the page. Alright. So I'm gonna add a couple more over here. Yeah, it's a little one. She's 5 weeks old. I'm just gonna add a couple more branches over here. And honestly, you could do this process for forever and add as many as you can. I'm doing it pretty quick. Mostly, I think that's partly just because I have gotten to the point where I can trust the process and I just know that it's gonna be okay. Like even like, you know, I just did a branch earlier that I was like, like I don't really like that branch, but it's okay because it's going to blend in with the rest of the branches. Okay, I'm going to, poor baby, I'm going to make a slightly darker brown, or sorry, gray, and do one more layer where I'm going to put a little bit more detail on these. Actually, let's go ahead And see, I'm just looking at this. Let's do some of the greenery, which bear in mind it's not that much more green. So let's get our yellow out. If you still have some of your blue out and it's not dried up, you can use that. But this green, guys, it's like the grayest green. If you have to step out, I'll understand. Yes. I mean, theoretically, I could, but I also feel like it's weird to just like have a dead stream, like dead on air. When she was first born, she was totally fine with taking a bottle, and I think recently she has developed not liking to taking the bottle. So there's that. Let's see. Okay, so let's go ahead and make a slightly darker gray. So I have my white as my base, some black, some brown, some blue, and some yellow, because that'll make it a tad bit green. Okay. Okay, so it does have a green tint to it, but I think I need it to be darker. So I'm adding a little bit more black. I'll add a little bit more blue, because that will also darken it up. And add a touch of yellow, see where we're at. Okay, I think this should be good. So it just looks like a dark gray, but it has a slight tint of green to it. Okay, so there's a couple different ways that you can do the greenery. You can do it with a sponge. You could do it with a filbert, or sorry, not a filbert. Well, you could do it with a filbert. You could do it with a fan brush. I'm gonna try to use my older brush that separates a little bit. Let's see. All right, and I'm just going to kind of add this on there. I'm placing it and then kind of doing a little bit of a swoop, just to give the branches like a direction. I might step out for just a second and see if there's anything I can do to help. But yeah, so I'm touching it and then doing a really slow, really quick like movement in the direction and lifting off. And that is working really well. I am going to add a little bit more black to it to darken it up. Going over here. Okay, I'm going to finish this green, and then while you guys are doing that, I will be right back. Alright. Alright, I will be right back. If anybody asks where I am, just let them know. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Alright. Don't forget to pause us. We can hear everything. Oh, we're good. We're good. Okay. I'm back. How are we doing? Are we slowly catching up? Are you guys in a place where I can move on? Or let me say, how many of you have gotten to the greenery, the foliage? We're good? Are we good to go? Okay. If you use too many symbols, why is, I'm gonna untime out. How do can I untime out? Linda, I apologize. My Nightbot just timed you out because you've been the only one commenting. I don't know how to untime you out. That's okay. Okay. That's okay. No worries. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on. So we're going to put a little bit of detail on these, on the trees. We're gonna do the background, the foreground real fast, and then we can spend the rest of the time on the focal point of the painting. Okay. I'm going to make a, let's see, make a gray that's a little bit darker so I can just put a couple details. I am gonna put in, I forgot to put in my my one over here. That's good. Okay, that one we can put a little bit more detail on. But for these, let's do a little bit darker of a gray. That's pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna use a little bit of my palette knife and just see how I like it. I think for these ones over here, it's still gonna be too much detail. Yeah, so I'm just kind of putting some texture with my bigger brush, putting a little bit of texture on there. I'm gonna get some white. I'm gonna go over to this one. This one I think I am going to use a little bit of my palette knife, just a little bit. And if you want it, if you don't have a palette knife, you could do the same thing that we were doing over there by just kind of what color was the greenery real quick? It was the same color as everything else for now, plus a little bit of green. So it was a dark gray plus a touch of blue and yellow. So I'm almost putting like army-like texture on this tree. Give it a little bit of something something. Oops. Too much. There we go. I think that's good. Maybe I'll put a little bit of that over here. Alright, so let's go ahead and make the base for the bottom. And then while that's drying, we can add in a couple more branches, like the black branches up above, and then we'll be done with the trees. But let's make the bottom base first. The base is going to be our brown. A little bit of brown. And then go ahead and add in some yellow. And then a touch of red. Oops, that was a lot of red. And I'm gonna make two different browns. So I have this like chocolate brown that I just made that'll be kind of more of the dark edges, and then I'm adding more of my yellow and red to this one. And then a touch of white. Remember, everything in this painting is a little bit mistied. So it's all got like a tint of white in it. So I think this is the right color if it were bright and sunny out, but because it's overcast, we need to add some of that white to it. And a little bit of black, not to lighten it up, but to gray it out. So this brown, we have our brown, our yellow, our red, our white, and a little bit of black. Because whenever you add white and black to something, it grays out the tone. That's good, but it still needs more gray. So I'm adding a little bit more white and a little bit more black. Okay, I think this is a good brown for that. Okay. So I kind of have two browns and then one I kind of just made a little bit brighter, so less grayed out. But I have my dark brown, my grayed out brown, that'll be a lot of, you know, this foreground. And then we'll put in our animal. So go ahead and grab your large brush, get it a little bit wet. I'm gonna start off with the medium color here first. And I'm not gonna make it a straight line. And I think my brown could even be more grayed out. So you're going to slowly start working down to the bottom into your darker brown. And don't feel like you need to mix the bottom perfectly, because it's gonna have texture on it. So I have the reason I can go so fast with this is because I have a ton of paint on my canvas, and it makes it really easy to do what I'm doing. So don't be shy with the amount of paint that you're using. And just while this is still wet, I'm just gonna brush up a little bit. Some of this might get covered up, but that's fine. Because we'll add, it's just part of adding layers. And while this is still wet, if you can, I'm just toning out some of the background with some of this gray so that it is just a little bit less of a line. So I'm taking some of this grayish brown and I'm putting it on the edge and then kind of just blending it in. And then take whatever brush you would like and take that same color and you're just going to add some grass. Just little tiny motions with the same color as what we just painted. Kind of that grayish brown. You can use a liner brush, you can use a fan brush. I'm just using the same brush that I was using, the filbert brush. I'm just turning it to the side and flicking it up. And I think while this is still a little bit wet, I'm gonna go ahead and just put in a couple more colors here. So my black, maybe a little bit of my brown, that darker brown. Just to create some unevenness. And it's still slightly damp, it's still slightly wet, so it still kind of blends in a little bit. And take some white here and there. Alright. Let's go ahead and put in our deer. Now if you have the traceable and you drew around it, like I had said in the beginning, you'll most likely still see that through it and you can go around it. If you have the traceable and you did what I did, I'm going to be painting the back of it and then placing it here so I can get a general idea of its shape. If you do not have that, then you can go ahead and just draw it on. And I will show you how to do that once I do this. So for those of you who are doing it my way, you can grab, I would say grab a dark gray that you can get rid of if if it doesn't come out the way you want it to. Let's see. I've only done this 1 or 2 times before. And it didn't totally work. That's okay. The other option is to, you can go around it. So with a liner brush, you can go around it. I think I didn't put enough paint on it, is what the problem was. Alright, so if you do not have, if you didn't use the traceable or you didn't do the way that I did it, you want to look at it in shapes. So essentially you have, and I'll just show this, I'll show it to you in a dark color so that you can see it on camera. But if I were doing this at home with you, I would do it in a color that's barely different than the background so you could cover any mistakes up. So essentially you have the hip area, and then you have the front area, so essentially these 2 circles, and then you will connect the top of it in the back, and then come down in like a swoop, and that'll give you a good base to do your, like, the rest of it. Alright, then you have the head with an ear. So I'm going to go ahead and just cover this all, color it all in essentially. And I'm going to use my medium gray tone, or sorry, my medium brown tone to cover this all in, because that's the main color of it. Alright, so you're just gonna fill in that whole area. And we'll be blending in the bottom in a little bit. Okay, so now we can do the antlers. So just take your smallest brush with that same grayish brown, that medium brown color. You're going to create the antlers. So the base is one comes up like that. And the other one comes out a little bit further. But honestly, this is the part where this is a little bit more naturistic, because they all grow a little bit differently. Alright, so while this all dries, we're going to take a little bit of black, and you're going to add in a couple more branches up top if you want to. I'm going to take some of this brown and add a couple, like the darker brown, and add a couple leaves, kind of like it is in the picture. Really adds a nice touch. Alright, so we have about 15 more minutes. We're going to spend a little bit of time on the deer, add a couple details. It is in the distance, so there's not a whole lot of details. It's more of suggestive details with light, so it shouldn't be too hard. And then we just have a little bit of detail on the foreground, but honestly you could leave the foreground like this, but that's up to you. Okay. So I am going to add a little bit more of this right here. Let's do, I'm gonna grab a little bit of my dark brown and blackish. I'm gonna do my dark tones first. So I'm gonna grab some of my dark brown. This is the darkest. Where did I put my reference? It's okay. Is the bottom of his neck. And that's a little bit more on the black side. I'm gonna get a little bit more black. And then it's dark on the underbelly right here. And then it's really dark on the inside of the legs. And again, we're just focusing on the dark parts right now. We're gonna come back and lighten things up. So even if you go too far up with the black or whatever, that's okay. We're gonna come back and kind of fix things. We have the face. Let's go ahead and make our highlight real fast. So it's going to be this brown color plus some white and potentially a tad bit of yellow, but we'll see. We'll see what this looks like. There's just a couple highlights in different areas on the legs, on the legs, on the belly area a little bit. That's more black. Take it back. Thank you. But honestly, okay, so far away, it looks a lot different than if you're sitting up close. So what I'm looking at looks different than what it looks like on this screen, which is why I keep looking at this screen, because I get I don't know, 5 foot, because I see what this is seeing plus what I'm seeing at a distance from my computer. So if you are in doubt of what it looks like, step back, like get out of your chair and step back and look at it from a distance. I guarantee you it looks a lot better than you think. Also, you've been staring at it for a while, so sometimes just getting up and walking around and then coming back to it, it looks different. If I look at it, like if you really look at what's close, the close part of it, like it's very rough. But part of that is also, part of it being rough is it's in that distance and we can't see a lot of those details, which is what we want. And it's okay that we see some of the roughness of the canvas because that'll give it texture. Okay, I'm going to use a smaller brush for the face. I'm just making things darker. There is a little bit of a line here for this darkness. So make sure that there is a little bit of a distinction. It's still dark, but and you're just going to add little details here and there. If you see something that should be lighter or darker, just change it. I'm not going to tell you every single little thing that I'm doing because honestly, yours probably looks a little bit different and needs something different. So like I can see right now that this right here there needs a little bit more distinction, that there is like a leg here. So I'm gonna darken it up. Darken it up, and then I can see that, okay, there's darkness there. Now I need a little bit of that light to come through. So I'm just going to make a little bit of light around it. And there's that. And I think there's probably even a little bit of light going down the leg too. And on the face, try not to draw a face. Try to look at it in highlights and lowlights. So I can see that there's a highlight right above the eye. There's kind of a little bit over here too. There's a few highlights in the ears and on the ears. There's a highlight under the jawline, and then on the top of the nose. And then there's lowlights, there's darkness where the nose is. I need to go even darker. It's dark on the nose. There's kind of like this line that comes down, kind of like down his mouth. And then there's a darkness for the eyes. We're getting there, okay. So see how I'm just like looking at highlights and lowlights right now. I'm looking at a little bit. Sometimes if we look at it in like all in one piece, it's like, okay, we have to draw this face, and it can be really intimidating. But just focus on the darks and lights, and then all of a sudden, like, it's not perfect. If I look really close, I can see all of its, you know, awfulness. But working at bits and pieces, you get there. So that's just me looking at highlights and lowlights. Now I can come in and be like, okay, so the hair on his chest goes up and around like the back of his neck, which creates the roundness of his cheek and gives his cheek form. So now I can go in and focus on just that part. And I can see that there's a little bit of darkness on like the bridge of his nose, like right here. And I think for a highlight, I can see a little bit more of his lip. So I'm just going to try to bring attention by just adding a little bit of lightness to that area. And I can start making some of the highlights a little bit lighter. Like, I still think the one right above his eye is a little bit lighter, so I can make that a tiny bit lighter. The one on his cheek is just a little bit lighter above his nose. And just slowly start adding these different details. I can start adding the same highlights on his body. And I'm adding it in little tiny bits because his fur is those, like, it's going to reflect the fur. That's reflecting the different light. Again, if you guys have any questions, let me know. At this point, I'm just looking at any little thing that I can change. But we are at the end of class, so I'm just gonna real quick do some texture for the bottom. And you can do this in any class, or sorry, in any color that you want. Your blacks, your browns, your grays. And I'm just going to be adding texture. So I'm grabbing my brush, making sure that there's a little bit of water in my paint mixture, and I'm just brushing up with these different colors, starting from the back and working my way down. You can even add some white in here. Just adding little textures of grass. Twigs. I will say that make sure you go over his feet. If you get too much white or too much of a certain color, you can always go over it with a darker color. And then you can go in with your black. And add the foreground. So I'm just taking my black and brushing up. And if you wanted to add more detail, you could go in with a liner brush and add long twigs here and there. all sorts of things. But this is going to be it for me. I am needed elsewhere. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me for this class. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to go ahead and sign mine in the corner with some white. That turned gray, so I'm going to grab some new white. And yeah, I look forward to our next class. Our next class is going to be our cards, so make sure to tune into that. Make some DIY cards for you, and you can send them off to your loved ones. And yeah, just gonna sign mine in the corner. There we go. All right, thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.